why do we pay people to harm us? That's exactly what has happened. We just stopped a payment, Doge just stopped a payment from going to the WEF. You won't believe how much. Also, it shows that the USAID money that we were allowing, that the judge still wants to release, that money was being used to go to Europe to then turn around and fund propaganda against conservatives. Literally, the story will blow your mind of how our money has been used against you. They're taking your tax dollars and then turn around and use it against you. We're going to talk about that. Also, we're going to discuss the secret society of legal justices. This secret society actually has one thing in common. They all call themselves conservatives or liberals or bipartisan, but the one thing they have in common is how much they hate Trump. We're going to discuss who's part of that. And the one person that's part of it is the one that dominates most of the law passing in America, or the law upholding. We're going to discuss that with our Supreme Court. Also, we're going to talk about the new epidemic. Now, we heard about the measles outbreak in Texas, but now there's actually reports of death. Now there's a fight over freedoms or not to put something in here or not for the public cry of children not making it. We're going to discuss what is freedom, what is liberty, and what is the safety for everyone else. It's a hot button issue. We're going to talk about it because this epidemic now is spreading and they're worried it's going to make a big difference in America. And then lastly, we're going to discuss the all-out war basically with Ukraine and Russia. Now, it seems like because there's been talks of peace and ceasefires, you see very bold and brazen attacks happening on both sides. And the reason I think is because the ceasefire and the peace negotiations, quote-unquote peace negotiations, will be determined on who has the upper hand in this agreement. So I think now you see all-out attacks going at the heart of each other because they want to have the upper hand. We're going to discuss some of the things that could transpire and actually what's it mean to truly have peace in Russia-Ukraine. Let's dive into these stories and a few more. This video starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the channel today. Thank you so very much for coming. We humbly thank you for watching and enjoying this time with us. It is a pretty chilly day here in South Mississippi, but a beautiful day. So we hope wherever you're at that you find peace and you find happiness in the day that you have. And we find that we can give you information, hopefully that will help you navigate this crazy world that we live in. And we just, again, thank you so much for your presence here. Now let's jump into these stories because these stories are very important to us and our families. First, let's talk about the payments stopped and the payments released. Now, there was a payment stopped yesterday that was going to the World Economic Forum. Now, the crazy thing is this is our taxpayer dollars that was negotiated and given from our Congress in appropriations from our government to the WEF. So when Congress tells you they're working against the global initiative, they're lying to you because they're the ones that authorize these funds. Now guess what? Doge just stopped it. Let's talk about how much they just stopped. That was going to WEF. It says, breaking, Elon Musk Doge just blocked a $52 million payment to the World Economic Forum. Now why was it going there? Nobody knows. But we wonder why America seems to be always on the kind of the bottom end and like the redheaded stepchild that gets beat all the time. Well, it's because we're using our own taxpayer dollars to hurt our America First policies, because Klaus Schwab is not worried about America First policies. He's worried about global initiatives. And it's amazing how we were just going to allow this payment to go through. Now, here's what you're going to get. Spin from the Congress and from the Senate. Oh, I'm glad he stopped that payment. They're blowing smoke to make you feel like they're working for you, while they're part of the allocations that allowed this to take place. We're going to talk about something else. Listen to this. USAID censorship schemes already exposed. Global Engagement Center worked with UK government and media firms to deploy AI tools to hurt conservatives and to silence the people who were trying to spread truth. So what we were doing, our USAID was paying this source, this NGO, like I said, a lot of this NGOs and these foundations, and what they were doing was working with the UK government to silence conservatism even in America. We were using our taxpayer dollars to hurt the conservative America First movement with their own tax dollars. Again, blame your Congress, because they're the ones that appropriate this money, and instead of reading these thousands and thousands of page bills, they vote rank and file because that's what their bosses tell them to do, which is completely why we need term limits, because of this reason. Even Ron DeSantis said the only way you're going to ever heal the United States is you get term limits on the Congress, and he is exactly right. So we see that our money was used against us when it came to the allocations, and Doge is exposing this. That's why they hate Elon so much. I want you to listen to this. There's a new report that says that the WHO is definitely on the brink of collapse because they were dependent on the flooding in of money given to them. Now remember, what did you hear always with the WHO? That Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was one of the biggest funders of WHO. Well, what happened was our taxpayer dollars were going to the WHO, but they were also going to some of these foundations and NGOs that Bill Gates set up, which was also funding the World Health Organization. So again, we were giving our taxpayer dollars to something that we shouldn't be giving it to, and that's the only thing that kept it afloat. Now, because we've put pressure on NATO, now Europe has all of a sudden found money to support NATO and their missions and military involvement all over the world. Isn't it amazing how all of a sudden we stop funding, or we threaten to stop funding, or we threaten to jump out of these things, and all of a sudden other countries just happen to find more money. So hey, if they want to waste their taxpayer dollars of their countries, let them, but not to waste ours. Same way with this UK government. Why do we want to support, why do we feel like they're our biggest allies when they're part of the USAID funding that was going to hurt America by putting out propaganda of America First conservatism? You wonder why Trump doesn't want really a relationship with a lot of European countries. Actually, there's a report showing that he is pulling back some of the people that are over there working in embassies, because what he realizes is if we have friends like the Western Europeans who has literally used tariffs and used our own money against us, why do we need enemies? So I actually like the fact that he's putting a little bit more pressure on these European presidents and parliaments, because he's saying, look, I'm sick of you trying to abuse America by taking our money, using our taxpayer dollars against us, and all that stopping. So I love the fact that Elon stopped this big payment to the wealth. I love the fact that we're out of WHO and Bill Gates is crying about it. But I'm glad that we're actually pulling back from some of this, because now we're starting to expose fraud. One thing I've learned is this. When someone's doing something wrong and someone's taking the money, when all of a sudden the money stops flowing, they're the ones that speak the loudest. Well, what have you heard? Everybody complaining tends to be people that didn't need the money, and they've been getting the money and probably shouldn't have been getting the money. Like Bill Gates. He's an uber billionaire. Why is he complaining that he's not getting enough funds? Isn't that amazing? So I love the fact that when you stop these funds, things start really coming out. Think about the story yesterday with the Congo. They're willing to give us $20 trillion worth of rare earth minerals because we quit the funding, and now since we quit the funding, they're willing to give us something, which is what we should have been getting the whole time. Someone said we should have been having access to those rare earth minerals for the last 50 years because we've been funding the Congo. But no, we never had a president and Congress actually standing up and saying, no, you're not going to take our money for just free, just because we are supposed to police the world. So I love what's happening here is when our money stops flowing to all these crooked people, we start realizing how crooked they really are. Now, before we go any further, a word from today's sponsor. Have you ever Googled yourself and literally your family members and information of yours came up? The question always comes to mind is how much of my public information is actually on the World Wide Web, on the internet, where people could just access it. Not only that, think about all the spam calls you get, all the spam emails you get. I get several a day and have to block and block and block. That's where my friends at Aura, the sponsor of today's video, can help. Aura will help remove your personal information from data brokers and people searching sites to sell your information from and to identity thieves and scammers and more. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, your house number, your phone number. And not only do they check it and monitor it, they will alert you if all of a sudden they find that your information has been compromised. Also, Aura VPN. VPN protects you on the internet, and this was with military-grade protection when it comes to Aura's VPN. It blocks all scam and phishing sites from getting your information in your accounts. What about an antivirus? What about a password manager? 24/7 US-based support. I get all this in one app called Aura. I do not want to leave myself vulnerable. We talk about it all the time. We live in a digitized world. The last thing I want to do is protect my home and not protect myself online. Check out aura.com/themax today. You will not be sorry that you did. My information is mine. My social is my social. My address is mine. The last thing I want is someone else to have it. You can go to my link below, aura.com/themax, and get 2 weeks free. That will be enough for you to see how Aura is an asset to you, because you're going to realize how much you're exposed online. Stop leaving yourself vulnerable. Check out Aura today. Link is in the description. Thank you so much, Aura, for sponsoring today's video. Now let's jump into this secret society, because this is a pretty big deal. And you know, it's one of those cases, we mentioned this the other day, but now it's actually starting to get traction. It's amazing, the things that I talk about here, all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 or 4 days later, or 2 or 3 weeks later, it's all of a sudden saying, wow, he actually was telling the truth. And some of the things that we're exposing here is starting to break, because you're starting to learn about things before it actually happens. What did I say about Roberts the other day about this alleged report? Listen to this. Revealed by the Gateway Pundit, Chief Justice Roberts called in a secretive, invite-only club for elite judges and lawyers that include James Boasberg, the guy that is stopping the Trump with these injunctions, Amit Mehdi, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, another Supreme Court justice. So we're now seeing this secret society of lawyers and justices who are trying their hardest to work against the president. Don't you think that's a little corrupt? Especially when 2 of them sit on the Supreme Court and the other one is trying to make injunctions happen against the president. This is another report from talking about the same thing. It's amazing how we talked about this days before these reports broke. It has been revealed that Chief Justice Roberts is part of an elite group that is made up of almost all anti-Trump judges based in the DC area and around the bureaucrats of Washington. This group is made up of highly prolific people who all rule against Trump. Roberts listed as an honorary bencher of the Middle Temple. Now that, you tell me that ain't secret society crazy jargon there. Many of whom, which is also allegedly linked. Listen to this. Guess what this society is linked to? Who is funding this society? I bet you I can give you one guess and you're going to know it. Soros. This group includes the people that we named earlier. He's part of this Middle Temple that is also allegedly linked to Soros-funded legal fellowship. This revelation follows Roberts' recent statement defending the judges and rejecting Trump's call for their impeachment. You know why? Because he is literally in a secret society with them. Isn't it amazing how we see how deep these secret societies and how deep the scandals and the exposures of these things actually come? This corrupt guy, and he is over the Supreme Court. So when I tell you, for instance, let's just go over Judge Blocks. Breaking news, Judge Blocks. Breaking news, Judge Blocks. There's 3 breaking trending stories on Twitter right now that deals with the judges trying to block Trump. The only way forward is to ignore these judges and let the chips fall where they may. Because when you start exposing them and you start opening the door, then people start investigating, and all of a sudden you start realizing, oh wait, Boasberg's daughter is tied up in a Soros-linked fund. Oh wait, Judge Roberts is in a secret society with these same ones that are bringing injunctions. Oh wait, he's with Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is absolutely a liberal and really not that smart, but then he's supposed to be a conservative over the Supreme Court and completely nonpartisan and completely not biased, but he's sitting literally with a secret society made up of literally 99% of anti-Trump judges. So you wonder why we're not going to get anything passed? You wonder why Amy Coney Barrett is kind of getting close to Roberts? Is it because they're actually not trustworthy and they're truly been bought and paid for by Mr. Soros? Now let's keep on going with these breaking stories. Listen to this. Texas is poised to make measles a national epidemic, public health expert says. Now what's the solution here? And this is the part that gets really tense. Because some families that are believing to not do this. You have some families believing to do this. You have some families who grew up with it and they know that it's just another phase of kids growing up, kind of like chicken pox or other outbreaks that you'd get. You get little viral things and they go away. But now the debate has now crossed into, well, it's crossing state lines. It's now having problems in Arizona and New Mexico. And they're saying that it very well could end up being the next pandemic. Now this is a measles outbreak, which is something that we've seen for a long time. You have RFK trying to play both sides of this. Now, I want to know your thoughts on this. I tell you, and this is why. I want you to think of it this way. If someone is drinking very heavily, and they're drinking in their home very heavily, they're not really impacting you. You get what I'm saying? But if someone is drinking heavily at a bar and they're having to get on the road as someone who is very inebriated, and your family is also at that restaurant and you're leaving at the same time, then that person actually could affect you. Now, the reason I say that is because I'm very divided on this situation. We have to have our liberties and freedoms. But what I'm scared of is, I'm not scared of this outbreak, but I'm scared of different times where we see players putting new things out there, and all of a sudden this new epidemic or pandemic comes along. If we would be responsible and smart, and if we had something or some kind of danger, that we would just learn to just stay at home and let it get well. You know, for instance, if I have the stomach virus or the flu, I just tend to stay home because I don't want anyone else to get sick. It's not because I believe that I should just go out and be completely independent and I've lost my liberty because I'm staying home. No, I'm staying home because it's just a smart thing to do. I'm being responsible. Well, the same thing with these outbreaks. I think if we would just learn to be grown-ups, we wouldn't need these things in our arms. We would just learn to let these viruses play their course, but we would have to learn to just be responsible, maybe stay home. Kind of like the drinking thing again. Don't drink, but if you're going to get intoxicated and inebriated, it's better for you to do that at home and not at a bar somewhere where you have to drive home, and now you're impacting other people. Well, I think the same thing with these outbreaks, these so-called outbreaks, and these so-called situations, kind of like we dealt with 2020. If we would learn to just be smart, the government wouldn't have to step in and say we had to have this or not. We would just be smart because we would just stay home and be responsible. If my kids are sick, we just stay home. If my kids are not sick, we're just going out. But if I hear that there's someone at our church or someone that is sick in our community and we just know we're going to that same place, we just tend not to go because we tend to be responsible. That's the thing I think we're missing in this whole outbreak scenario and what we missed in 2020. That if we're really grown-ups and we're really responsible, then we need to think, okay, if we want liberty and freedom and we don't want government to step in, the best thing to do is just to be responsible. Meaning, if you're sick, stay home. If you're not sick, go out. But remember, if you are putting yourself in precarious situations when you know there are other people that could be sick, like for instance in Texas, if you know there's some problems in your area, then it may be wise just to not go out and get involved in it, because then the discussion then becomes, well, does the government need to step in? Well, does the health experts need to step in? Because now we've got a bigger situation. So I think all these discussions when it comes to, you know, does the government need to step in? Do we need these things in our arms or not? Do we need to see these outbreaks get worse? No. But I think if we would just be smarter by just staying home if we're sick, by trying to get well, by trying to just take it easy. I think America puts herself in a rat race so much that that's why these things spread like they do. Stomach virus has been running crazy in our area. And it's like, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible thing, but you don't feel good, and then all of a sudden you can't do anything because you literally are sick, throwing up, or either you feel terrible, running fever, whatever it may be. So it's like, if we would just learn to stay home and just go through it, get through it, get well, and then go back out, it wouldn't be spreading, would it? But no, we're addicted to going to work, we're addicted to sending our children to these schools, and then it just keeps on spreading. So let's just be responsible. That's my thought when it comes to this outbreak. The last story I want to bring up is the Russia-Ukraine situation. We're talking about a ceasefire here, and I believe that there's a ceasefire that could easily happen. There was a report that showed that over 1 million people on each side have passed since they started this war. That's a lot of generations of people. And it's so sad, it's heartbreaking, because a lot of this was started by 2014 and the issues with our government overstepping and NATO overstepping. And also bad players on both sides. I mean, we have to admit that. But now I think the problem is this: because of the talks with the ceasefires, I think you're seeing the vulnerability and the worry of each side. So what they're doing now is trying to strongman each other. So we have seen two things happen. We've seen a major attack with bombs going off in Russia, and we've seen major attack with bombs going off in Ukraine. Where now it's not just about war, it's not about just the militaries, it's about casualties. I think you're starting to see this because both sides are trying to have the upper hand. Now, both sides have said they're willing to negotiate, but their terms are absolutely stupid. Now, the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to see who is going to have the upper hand. Now, sadly, people have died in this war. And really, this war is amongst people in a regional area that are kin to each other. So it's absolutely heartbreaking. But what I do hope that Trump can come out with this Putin negotiation is that there is a ceasefire. Now the problem is this. What did I say with NATO? NATO is now poised to fund more, and they're looking to, within a 5 to 10 year period, take over all military spending in Europe. Now that's stupid, because America is their main focal point. And I'll be honest with you, I hope we pull out of NATO, and I'm totally fine with that. But here's the thing. If we're working for peace, and NATO and these countries in Europe are still funding this war and trying to give more and more and more to Zelensky, building him up that they're going to all of a sudden help him go to war, and we're going to enter some kind of major conflict for the whole world, then how is this negotiation actually going to work, especially if we have one side who is willing to keep on fighting because he's being built up by players that shouldn't have a dog in the fight? Trump can look for peace, but if NATO and every other Western European country is fighting to keep this thing going, then I don't know if we're actually going to find peace. And to be honest with you, I'm scared that then you're going to see more and more casualties die, because they're going to keep on raising the escalation. They're going to keep on bombing capitals. They're going to keep on going deep into the hearts of each country. That's not what they did for the longest. They stayed kind of on the lines. They were fighting over simple lines. Now, with this increased talk of a ceasefire, this increased talk of agreements, you're actually seeing them going towards capitals. And if Trump and Russia does not get some kind of peace agreement on the table, I'm scared you're going to see NATO push Ukraine even deeper into this war. And I think that escalation is going to keep on going, where then you're going to see these capitals attacked. And not only attacked, you're going to see an escalation of war that's going to put everyone into it. And that's not what we want as America. That's not what anybody wants. So we have to be very careful with this ceasefire. We're starting to see major problems. I love the fact that what Trump said the other day. He said, I'm thinking about taking over the nuclear plants and the energy of Ukraine. Now, does he want to own Ukraine? Does he actually want to be in Ukraine? No. What he's trying to do is try to take all the legs off their stool, so that way they have nowhere to sit, and they're going to have to come to the bargaining table. So he's actually trying to undermine NATO and Ukraine, because what they're wanting is to keep on escalating a war that's supposed to be coming to a ceasefire. All the while, he's trying to bring a ceasefire, and Russia is too. So I think the biggest play here is this. By Trump trying to negotiate and then also taking the legs off the stool and cut certain funding and energy in Ukraine, this could bring them to the table, keep NATO and Western European countries out of it, and actually we could see true peace in this area. If we don't, the 1 million on each side, which is 2 million people that they said has supposedly died from this war, could easily go to 3, 4, or 5 million, and could easily escalate into not a region war anymore, to a world war. Not only that, it can escalate to a conflict with nuclear arsenals, because China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, ourselves, and several other NATO countries are now all poised to get into it. And that would be a bad, catastrophic event. Guys, let me know your thoughts on these stories. Now, I know that the liberty issue that I talked about, and I know the fact of this war, that brings up a lot of opinions. I want you to understand that, look, I don't want you to be mad. I don't want you to take the word of each side and just build an opinion. I want you to gain wisdom from it, and that way you can start saying, okay, I see now that the funding that we were doing was wrong. I see now that NATO undermining America was wrong. I see now that this secret society with these judges proves my point of why they're doing these injunctions and why they don't want to impeach the judges. When you start digging into these things, you start seeing some of the things behind it, and it starts exposing truth. What do they say? When you turn a light on in a room, it shows you what's all in the room. Well, that's exactly what I think this administration is doing. They're turning the light on, and that transparency is opening up the doors where you're starting to expose some of the dangers and secrets that's been going on behind us. And actually, what's so sad is most of it has used our money to cause the problems for us. Crazy times we live in, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these stories, and God bless you and your family as you go through the day. Gain wisdom, seek wisdom, and of course find peace in God. Be free.